Good evening. My name is Christopher Keevy, and I am the safety manager for Apex Building Company. I'm happy to welcome you here tonight to the resident education on lead-based paint hazards, which is an EPA-driven course just to notify residents on things to look for, dangers, so on and so forth. This training session is being conducted for the building and the tenants at 76 Grove Street in Brooklyn, New York, 11221. Today is Thursday, December 12th, and it is a little bit after 6 p.m. Our trainer this evening will be Kirk Jeffries, and he is with Able Safety, and he is a EPA certified lead renovator. So I'll go ahead and I'll get everything turned over to Kurt, and I hope you enjoy and have an opportunity to learn. Kurt.
All right. Chris.
Thank you.
All right. Good evening. All right. Like Chris said, my name is Kirk Jeffries. I'm here to just go over some awareness as it pertains to lead, especially lead-based paints, things like that, either within your home or your apartment building. So first thing we're going to do is just show you a quick video here. They did a news, I guess, not an expose, but on a homeowner based out of Jersey who had a house that he was renting out and found out that they had lead-based paint in the home. And the kind of the steps that need to be taken to fix that according to the EPA's regulations. All right.
Federal government about a danger in many American homes. Lead continues to poison children across the country.
And now the EPA has proposed some new standards to eliminate the contaminant. CBS 2's Christina Fan reports now from Newark.
When Jomo Rose first purchased his Newark home last year, possible lead contamination wasn't even on his radar. But shortly after moving in, he learned one of his youngest tenants, a 2-year-old girl, had traces in her bloodstream.
I was just like, oh my gosh, I got to do something because this poor child.
Rose says city grants helped him pay for abatement. But nationwide, roughly 31 million homes have the same hazardous paint on their walls, according to the EPA.
We know that no level of exposure to lead is good for our children.
To eliminate the danger, the EPA introduced a groundbreaking proposal Wednesday to lower its lead dust hazard level to anything greater than 0, selecting Newark, a city that recently overcame a lead crisis in its water system, as the backdrop for its announcement.
I think reducing the hazard level to 0 or just anything above 0 is going to help drive more cleanups. It's going to protect more children. It's going to remove the paint from these walls.
Lead-based paint was commonly used in homes before it was banned in 1978. Exposure has been proven to cause developmental delays, learning difficulties, and neurological damage.
I can just imagine so many other people going through this, or so many people don't even know that they're exposed to lead.
If finalized, the rule is expected to reduce the lead exposures of up to 500,000 children under the age of 6 per year. In Newark, New Jersey, Christina Fan, CBS 2 News.
All right. So, we begin by giving out these handouts here that come directly from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and we have them available for everyone that's here in 10 languages as well, so that everybody gets the same information, nobody will be left out. We're just going to go through some things here related to the awareness around, what lead is, how it's hazardous to you, things you could do to protect yourself, and where to kind of check around your house to see if lead is prevalent. All right. So, like I said in the video, as of 1978, the EPA, they passed a law saying that any homes built before that time need to be checked, especially once they're sold, for having lead, whether it's lead-based paint on the interior, exterior of the house, as well as the soil around the home as well, because sometimes lead can leach into the ground. And if you grow anything in your yard or your backyard, the things that you eat, you can ingest it that way. All right. So we'll go into, like I said, how it can get into your body, the effects of lead on your health, what you could do to protect yourself and your family, and then kind of which avenues you have to go down to reach out to anyone to help you with any lead-related issues. right? So, specifically for someone who is buying a home or selling a home. So the rule that the EPA passed states that sellers of homes have to disclose information on any lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards that reside either within that home or, like I said, the exterior or the ground. Real estate sale contracts must also include a specific warning statement about lead-based paint as well. And the buyers have up to 10 days to have somebody come in and inspect that home for lead to make sure everything is okay. When it comes to apartments, landlords must disclose known information on lead-based paint or lead-based paint hazards before the lease goes into effect. Any lease must include a specific warning statement as well about lead-based paint. So again, the key here with that one, especially with apartments, is all known information. If your landlord honestly is not in the know and maybe they've taken possession of that apartment building after an original landlord, they might not know specifically if they weren't passed down that information. So if it's not available to them, obviously they can't give it to you. So as soon as you are to find out about something, or if you question anything, you would need to bring it up to them and have them look into it. All right? So if you think lead-based paint exists anywhere in your home, first thing to do is not to try to remove it yourself. All right? You need to be properly trained and certified in that to do anything with removing lead-based paint. But what you can do is try to keep your painted surfaces in good condition to try to minimize any deterioration, and which would lead to paint chips, cracks in the walls, and things of that nature. Get your home checked for lead hazards, and you can go right to this website that you see here, epa.gov/lead. Everything you need to know related to lead will be on this site. If you don't exactly know how to navigate it, this is going to be your best friend right here, the search box. Just type in any keywords that you know of that relate to that, and you will get some type of help finding what you need. All right? Anything you notice, especially in apartment buildings, the first person you want to speak to is your landlord. They are considered what's called the competent person for these things. They have to be trained on how to know what to do if something like this arises, and who they need to call in to fix it properly. Right? You could try to regularly clean your floors, window sills, and other surfaces where dust collects, which could contain lead. Take precautions to avoid exposure to lead dust if you're doing any remodeling. And when you're renovating, repairing, or painting, make sure to hire only EPA, or in this case, a New York State approved lead safe certified renovation firm. Somebody who has that certification either through the EPA or what's called an RRP certification, right? Which is renovating, repair, or painting. Right? Let's see. So we'll get into the many ways that lead can find its way into your body. So we have the most obvious, breathing in lead dust, which comes from paint that's been around, and dust accumulates in these areas, especially if you're doing any types of renovations in your home where the dust factor will be higher than usual. Right? You can also swallow lead dust that is settled onto food preparation surfaces, or any other place where it hasn't properly been cleaned before preparation takes place. And for smaller children, they tend to ingest lead more so from paint chips that come off of the walls. You know, small children, they're just figuring it out, so they don't really know what it is. It looks like food to them. You know, if they have access to it, they might ingest it that way. So, you know, number one, always try to keep an eye on your children. I know that's hard all the time, but try to clean up those things if you see them. So this way, if you remove or eliminate that hazard, you won't have to worry about it. So ingesting lead is especially dangerous for children who are under the age of 6. At that age, their brains as well as their nervous system are more sensitive to the damaging effects of lead, as their bodies are still growing and, you know, building up protections for them to fight off things like that. They also absorb more lead as they're growing, and babies and young children obviously often tend to put their hands in their mouth a lot. It's just a subconscious thing that all children do. That's why, try to stress to your children, keep your hands out of your mouth, or if they're gonna do it, stress to them to wash their hands. After they touch anything, wash your hands, make sure they're clean so there's no residue or anything that's left on their hands. And women who are currently pregnant, the baby in the mother's belly is also prone to getting sick with lead-based illnesses, even in the womb. All right. So now, how does lead affect you, your health? So it's important to know that even small exposure levels are still very dangerous. Like they said in the video we watched, anything greater than 0 is a problem. Just because something is considered a lower exposure level doesn't mean it's safer for you. That just means it would take longer around that exposure for you to develop, the same symptoms that you would as if you were around something that was high exposure of lead levels. All right? So in children, exposure to lead can lead to nervous system as well as kidney damage, learning disabilities, attention deficit disorder, as well as decreased intelligence, speech, language, as well as behavioral problems, poor muscle coordination, decreased muscle and bone growth, as well as hearing damage. So plethora of things can go wrong once lead gets into your body. It wreaks havoc on multiple systems. So especially for children, we want to protect them as best as we can. All right. And like I said, even though low lead exposure is the most common type, exposure to high amounts, in a smaller setting, can lead to very, very devastating effects such as seizures, unconsciousness, and worst case scenarios, death for children. So we pray that doesn't happen. That's why we're trying to give you this awareness to prevent that from happening. All right. Now for adults, exposure to lead can lead to harm to a developing fetus while the mother's still pregnant, increased chances of high blood pressure while pregnant, fertility problems, not only in women but men as well, high blood pressure, digestive problems, nerve disorders, memory and concentration problems, as well as muscle and joint pain. So all things we definitely don't want to have to deal with if we don't have to. Right? So if you think your home contains lead in any form, especially lead-based paint, if you have children, you want to make sure you get that checked on, because children's blood lead levels tend to increase rapidly between the ages of 6 to 12 months, and they tend to peak at around 18 to 24 months. All right? The only way they're really going to find that out, sometimes it takes a while for your body to develop outwardly symptoms where you could kind of figure out something is wrong. So they would have to run, a blood test to see the amount of lead that is in their blood. And that's the only way they're going to figure that out, by going to a doctor and having them look into that. All right? All right. So, around your house, some of the more common areas you should be looking for lead in are, obviously, if your house is built before 1978, you have more of an increased chance of having lead-based paint. Back then, before we did all the studies and we found out how dangerous lead was, it was a very common part of a lot of building materials, especially paint. Same thing with asbestos. We all know it's dangerous now, but back then, it was very common in building materials. So, if your house was built before then and hasn't been properly, looked at or had somebody come in to fix it, just take that precaution and try to get someone in there to look at it. All right? So, lead can be found not only in your homes, but as well as child care facilities that are around the city, especially in, like we said, older buildings, either in private or public single-family homes and apartments, on surfaces inside and as well as the outside of the home, because the same paint that they use can be used on either one. And it can also leach into the ground. So especially if you have lead-based paint on the exterior of your house, after years and years of weather and rain, and once that paint starts to give way, it can leach into the ground. And if you're someone that likes to grow things around your property, that could be very hazardous to you. You can ingest things that way through your food. It might be a healthy alternative, you're growing your own food, but if the ground that you're growing it in is unsafe, that's not going to be very good for you. All right? All right. So, what you need to look for around your home. Obviously, paint that's in bad condition, it's deteriorated, it's peeling, chipped, cracking, anything like that, that should be looked at. So around your windows, your window sills, doors and door frames, as well as stairs, railings, banisters, and porches, anywhere where paint's going to be around those areas, you kind of want to look into those more so than anywhere else in the home. All right. Let's see. Now, lead-based paint is not really an issue to you as long as the paint remains in a good condition. As long as it's not cracked, it's not peeling, it's not hazardous to you because there's no way for you to breathe it in, one, and once it's not cracked, nobody can pick it up, especially children, and ingest it. But once you start to see it giving signs of wear and tear, now it's a little bit more dangerous for you. All right? Lead dust from renovations, from painting, very, very dangerous. All right? All settled dust, especially if it contains lead, it's easy for it to move from one part to another, especially in your home. If that dust gets on the floor, you can track that all throughout your house, from your shoes. Right? And then the lead in your soil, like we said, that can also be an issue. Right? So, who should you reach out to and what should they do when it comes to getting your home inspected? All right? You want to make sure, number one, you get somebody who's certified. If they are not certified, they should not be doing the job, because if they do anything wrong, you will still be at risk and they can potentially put themselves at risk. All right? So when they come to do the inspection, a proper inspector is probably going to use one or two methods to see if there's lead in the home. One, they could use a portable X-ray fluorescence machine so they could see past the paint into the wall to see if there's any heavy materials in there, which could potentially be lead. Or they can just scrape some paint off, take it to the lab, and then test it that way. All right? The technical term that they use for this is called a risk assessment, and the individual who does this job is called a risk assessor, which would be your home inspector there. All right? And they're going to go through all those problem areas that we just spoke about, checking deteriorated areas that are around your doors, windows, floors, stairs, and walls, any sample dust near painted surfaces, as well as bare soil in your yard. And they're going to test any extra paint that's left over, dust, and they're going to get all that stuff to the lab to figure out if it's safe for you or not. All right? And if anything they're saying to you, especially if they're using a lot of technical jargon when it comes to the inspection, make sure they explain it to you properly. If they're going to give you a report to show you, the finalized results of everything that they found in the home from the samples that they took, if it looks foreign to you or things don't make sense, don't be afraid to ask the assessor, what does this mean? You want to be, very clear about what they say, so going forward, you know what you need to do. If you're still confused after they do an inspection, then that they didn't clearly explain everything to you, and that's not good either. All right, so don't be afraid to ask questions. That's a part of their job, to make sure not only they do it, but you understand what the hazards are. All right. Let's see. All right. So how can you protect your family? Now that you know there might be lead around the home. All right. If you're renting, like I said, first person you reach out to is your landlord. That is their responsibility. If it gets to the point where you've reached out to them and they are not taking the complaint seriously, or it looks like they're dragging their feet and time keeps passing, reach out to them again. Always document, when you reached out to them, whether you spoke to somebody in person, what their name was, the date that you spoke to them, because you kind of want to show there's a timeline of how you reached out to them. Because if they don't do anything and you reach out to them once or twice, clearly it's probably not going to go anywhere. So your next step would be to go to the city, and you could call 311. Explain that to 311. They'll send their own inspectors out to your home or apartment to do an inspection, and if they find lead there, they will definitely go directly to your landlord, and there's no way that the landlord can duck it. All right, they will have to fix it, or they will be fined, or potentially end up getting jail time. You know, that happens a lot if they are considered negligent in their job. So just keep a timeline, because that shows that you've reached out, and it shows that there's a pattern there. You reached out and they didn't do anything, that's a pattern of negligence. All right? You can try to keep your painted surfaces clean and free of dust. Clean your floors, window frames, window sills, and other surfaces, weekly. It doesn't have to be a deep dive into your home, but if you can get one of those Swiffers that they have, the dusters, and just wipe around those areas and try to keep and remove as much dust as possible, that's fine. If you want to use a sponge and some warm water, something like that, wipe down the areas as well, that's also fine. Now, if you're mopping and cleaning your floors, just make sure all the cleaning utensils that you use to clean up these areas, you wash them and store them properly. If you're going to mop your floor and use solvents like, say, bleach or ammonia, be very careful of how you mix them. It's only supposed to be small amounts to large amounts of water. And if you mix them together, it could be potentially dangerous. Mixing two dangerous chemicals could create what's called a toxic gas, and that can knock you out, and then that's a whole other issue, all right? Make sure you clean up any paint chips immediately, especially from older areas that are deteriorating, anything like that. Wash your hands, make sure your children wash their hands very often. Like we said, even though you're home and people don't tend to think that way, just try to get them in the habit from young, so as they get older, it becomes second nature to them. Right? Keep the areas where the children might play free and clear, clean up behind them as much as you can. I know sometimes that'll be hard. You might come home from a long day of work and cleaning up is not the number one thing on your mind, but to the best of your ability, all right? Let's see. Like I said earlier, walking through your home, tracking dust through your house and moving it from maybe one centralized area to other parts. So try to remove your shoes if you can. I know most people do that only when they have carpet, but even on hardwood floors or hard tile floors, try to remove your shoes, leave them at the door so whatever's there stays there. All right? And then they put on here as well just a healthy diet, right? Having a healthier diet, especially for children, will build up immune system and a proper immune system in their bodies to fight off things that could potentially harm them, like low exposures to lead. Okay. All right. Now, another thing you could do to temporarily, it's not a permanent solution, to making sure you're not exposed to lead-based hazards, is to paint over damaged surfaces. I would not recommend, normally when you paint, and it's older paint, they tell you to scrape off the old paint. If you assume there's lead involved, don't do that. You could just paint, right over it. But that is only a temporary solution, because what's going to happen is when that new paint gets old and starts to deteriorate, now the older paint that's underlying there has lead in it, you're going to be exposed to it. Right? And obviously a very permanent solution is to get somebody who's properly certified, either with the EPA or a proper state-approved agency who has certification that they can show you. Don't take anyone's word for it. I know we live in a city where everybody's a good talker, but make sure you have some type of certification that you can validate. Especially if they're certified through the EPA, you should be able to find that somewhere. They'll have a list where you can look for people who are properly certified. All right? Let's see. Now, another person you could hire, which does pretty much the same thing, but they have a different title, is a certified lead abatement contractor. Now, this might be a company who is properly certified, and they'll have people who work for them who go out and actually do the work. and then everybody that works for them will also be properly certified. They not only know what to look for, how to properly fix it, but they also know how to clean up so that when they leave, there's no remnants of anything that could harm you, right? And if they do anything wrong, like we said, once you're certified by the EPA, they're a federal agency, they're subject to the federal rules and guidelines. So if something goes wrong, they're gonna, be on the hook for that. Right? So my advice to you is try not to clean it up yourself. I know most people just want to get it out of their house, but you can't dispose of lead-based paint, things like that, in the regular garbage. That's why somebody who's certified, they know not only how to fix it, but take it out of the house properly. They know all the proper gear to wear to protect themselves, how to cordon off sections of the home so that you're not exposed to the hazard while they're fixing it. And then they get it out of your home and then take it somewhere and dispose of it properly. Now, there are some things that will make exposure to lead or lead-based paint even worse, so you want to try to avoid these things. One of those is introducing an open flame or some type of torch to lead. You don't want to heat it up. That will just activate it more and then put it back into the air, and that's very bad for you. Right? Projects, especially during renovation, like sanding, grinding, planing, needle gunning, or blasting, all these technical construction terms, they all produce high quantities of dust. So when that happens, dust goes airborne, and if there's lead in that dust, it becomes what's called respirable, which means you can breathe it in, and then it becomes hazardous to you. Right? Make sure that these individuals, or like I said, RRP contractors, renovating, repair, or painting, they clean up as they go along. All right? That is the mark of somebody who is properly trained and knows what they're doing. They don't wait till the end to clean up. As they go along, things get cleaned up so they don't leave anything behind. All right? And they'll take care of everything, get it out of your home so you won't ever have to think about it again. Now, there are some other ways that you can be exposed to lead. And one of the biggest ones, or most common source, is lead in drinking water. That comes from, lead pipes that are older, or faucets or fixtures in your home that have been there for a long time. They have a lot of buildup. The water doesn't run, properly enough, and then lead gets into your water that way. So if your house is older or your apartment is older than or built before 1986, that is a possibility. I know New York City is one of the most technologically advanced cities in the world, but a lot of our infrastructure is still very old, and that plumbing work plays a part in that as well. So you wouldn't be able to taste it in your drinking water. It doesn't have a smell, so there's not an obvious thing like if you smelled, if there's like seeping gas or something like that. Sometimes it'll smell like rotten eggs, so there's a potential of something dangerous there. But lead in the water, you wouldn't know. So you have to be very careful with that. Let's see. So the best thing you can do when it comes to drinking water is only use cold water for drinking, cooking. If you have small children, making baby formula. Remember, boiling does not remove lead from the water. So I know sometimes they tell you to boil water, it gets the impurities out. Lead does not remove itself from the water by boiling. So that's not going to work, all right? Before drinking, flushing your home's pipes, try to run the tap water, give it a minute or two. So if there's any buildup in there, that gets out before you have to use it for drinking water or using it for any type of cooking or bath water, right? Let's see, as well as doing any laundry in your home or doing dishes, right? All things that could potentially put lead back on you or within your body. Right? Try to regularly clean your faucet screen. It's called an aerator. So if you've ever noticed, it's kind of like a mesh thing that's in your faucets. those need to be replaced at certain intervals. Normally, whoever makes the faucet, they'll have a recommended time of when that needs to be fixed, maybe every quarter, so every 3 or 4 months or something like that, sometimes twice a year. Whatever they recommend, just stick to that, all right? If you use a filter that's certified to remove lead, do not forget to read the directions to learn when to change it properly, all right? Leaving things in there for a longer period of time, even if you feel it's still in a good condition because maybe you haven't used it that much, it doesn't matter. You know, the manufacturer's recommendation trumps everything, all right? If you believe that there is lead in your water, or you start to notice that people in your home are becoming sick, you can't figure out why, contact your local water company. So in New York City, we would probably deal with the DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. They deal with most of that stuff, faucets, sewers, runoff water. That's kind of their jurisdiction, so you can reach out to them. You could even contact Department of Health and Mental Hygiene in New York City. They're all trained in how to deal with these, you know, different health hazards. And then they even have a number here you could call. Now, this is the EPA's Safe Drinking Water Hotline, 1-800-426-4791. All right? And then they also have a lead poisoning prevention number, very easy to remember, 1-800-424-LEAD, L-E-A-D. All right? And actually, they actually have a website here that you can go on, EPA's. So I'll show you real quick. So this would be epa.gov/safe water, and that pertains to anything with your groundwater around your home, if you have a well, or drinking water. And they'll let you know, how you can proceed to contact them or have somebody come out and test the water. All right? If you work in any occupations where the risk of ingesting lead is higher, like you work specifically in lead smelters, places that melt down different types of metal like lead, and you could be introduced to it that way. You need to be very careful, make sure you wear the proper gear, or if you deal in construction and you deal with a lot of lead materials, that's also a problem. If you work those types of outside jobs, be mindful that when you come home, a lot of times you can bring that stuff home with you, so try to remember to wash your clothes separate from everybody else's clothes in the home. Try to take your clothes off if you can. If you kind of have like a front room or right there by your door in your apartment, just take your stuff off before you go further into the home. All right? If you have any hobbies that could contain lead, like pottery or stained glass, or even refinishing furniture, they all have the potential to contain lead. So be very careful with that as well. All right? Like they said, you could call the health department, Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, and they could kind of walk you through the safe procedures in doing that. Older toys and furniture that may have been painted with lead-containing paint, especially if you have children in the home that are very young, that's a problem. Foods and liquids that are cooked or stored in lead crystal or lead glazed pottery or porcelain can also contain lead. And they have the old school ways, the folk remedies, such as they call them Greta or Azarkan, which were used back in the day to treat upset stomachs. Now back then, we didn't have all the information available to us like we do now. So it might have seemed like a good idea back then, but now, obviously we know a little bit better, so you want to be very careful with those. All right? And then we just have a whole host of information here of different agencies that you could reach out to if you have any questions. So there's the National Lead Information Center, and they have a website here that you could go right back here, the EPA site, epa.gov/lead, and a phone number for them as well. You could even reach out to HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Agency, right? Another federal agency that could help you with those things. EPA's Safe Drinking Water Hotline, and the website that I showed you. The Consumer Product Safety Commission Hotline. They have a website for them, as well as their phone number, and any other state and local health and environmental agencies. And then if you want to contact the EPA directly, the region that we would fall underneath is multiple regions throughout the U.S. We're Region 2, that's going to cover Jersey, New York, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. I don't know how those last two got in there, but somehow they did. All right, and they're based out of New Jersey. Their phone number's there. They also have their address if you want to send in a letter and speak to somebody that way. All the contact information is there. All right, and then they have, like I said, two more agencies you can reach out to. The Consumer Product Safety Commission, and they protect the public against unreasonable risk of injury from consumer products through giving them education, safety standards, activities, and then enforcing those standards that they made on the people who sell these products. And their information is here, website, as well as their phone number and address, and then the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD. All right? Their main mission is to create strong, sustainable, inclusive communities and quality, affordable homes for everyone. So that's their job. Their information's here. They're based out of DC, and you would find everything there. All right, so just kind of in summary here, be mindful that lead from paint, dust, and soil can be in and around your home and be dangerous if not properly managed. If you have small children, especially under the age of 6, lead is especially dangerous to them, so you want to try to protect them to the best of your ability. Lead exposure can harm young children and babies even while they're in the womb. Homes, schools, and child care facilities, or any buildings or properties built before 1978 has a much higher chance of containing lead, especially in the paint. Even children who may seem healthy may have dangerous levels of lead in their bodies. Like I said, sometimes it doesn't show outwardly for some time. So they could have very dangerous levels and you would never know. All right? It's not until the doctor tests their blood that they would find that out. All right? Disturbing any surfaces that have lead-based paint or removing lead-based paint improperly can also increase your danger, not only to yourself but your family as well. People can also get lead into their bodies by breathing or swallowing lead dust, or by eating soil or paint chips that lead has gotten into. All right? So, again, all this is just an awareness for you. The EPA is putting all this information out there to give you a leg up so that you have the information and the knowledge that you need to protect yourself and your loved ones. And hopefully, you never have to deal with this issue, but if you do, you have all this information readily available to you, so hopefully, you can get to the bottom of it without anyone becoming sick or affecting their health in the long run, right? So, thank you for your time. Chris, you got anything to say, or? Okay. All right, Chris.
Thank you, Kirk. I appreciate it. That concludes tonight's educational session regarding lead-based paint hazards for the residents of 76 Grove Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11221. Thank you very much.